Imagine if people responsible for protecting your workplace culture, onboarding your teams and managing your most sensitive people issues were themselves on the verge of collapse. Nearly half of HR professionals now say burnout is the single biggest risk facing their organisations heading into 2026. Not cyber attacks, not supply chain disruption, burnout. Meanwhile, 500 million messaging app users in India are bracing for a regulatory experiment that could reshape how the world thinks about digital identity, privacy, and surveillance. Coming up on Unbreakable Ventures, we examine how the people protecting your people are themselves in crisis. How India's new SIM binding mandate could become a blueprint for digital control, or a cautionary tale about unintended consequences. And we'll share 5 quick-fire emerging threats we've picked up throughout the fortnight. It's Monday the 15th of December, and we're covering the world's global threats over the last fortnight. So grab a coffee and let's get into it. Welcome to Unbreakable Ventures. I'm Ollie Law, and you are listening to our fortnightly risk update where we dive into emerging and current risks from around the world, focusing on some big stories and some you may have missed. We use the categories from the World Economic Forum's Global Risk Report to simplify the threats we're monitoring, but we also do some deep dives and interviews with industry peers. Before we get into this week's update, I want to address a terrible event out of Sydney, Australia. The community of Bondi Beach has been hit by a terrorist event that has left 15 dead as of recording. It is devastating to see these terrible events still continuing as we head into 2026. The US is also currently dealing with their own mass shooting at Brown University in Rhode Island. It's enough for one to question our own safety as we go about our days. Our thoughts are with those affected, our Australian cousins, and the students and families of Brown University. One thing has stood out to me as I watched the live footage at Bondi. It's that of the first responders and supporting emergency services. Even the famous Bondi lifeguards can be seen running barefoot towards the injured. While people ran from the gunshots, one can observe from amateur footage of these people running towards it, selflessly doing everything they can to help. These people are heroes, of course, but they're also highly trained and highly capable professionals. It's a real-life example of what happens when we create a culture and support for our people. It's evidence that if we continue to equip our people, more can be saved. If lone wolf scenarios or active shooters concern you, don't stay quiet. You can reach out to local emergency services and police for advice. You can conduct drills and exercises to practice how you would manage. Or you can reach out to our team for a complimentary chat where we can walk you through some practical advice. Just head to Unbreakable Ventures, click the About page and send us an email. In way of a quick update from us, this will be our last fortnightly update for 2025. I want to take a moment to thank all our listeners and subscribers for supporting us and listening in over the last year. A highlight for me was during a training session a few months back when a delegate mentioned they listened to our fortnightly update. They said it helped set context for the scenario we were running through. It's little moments like that which make these podcasts worth the time and effort. We'll be back on January 12th with our next update. But in the meantime, we plan to release some longer form deep dive podcasts you may enjoy over the holidays. From myself and the team at Unbreakable Ventures, we wish you and yours a truly wonderful festive season and a resilient, prosperous new year. With that out the way, let's dive into our first update this week. Let me ask you something uncomfortable. When was the last time you checked in on your HR team? Not about their workload, about them. A new global survey from HR technology platform HiBob has delivered a sobering verdict. 46% of HR professionals now identify burnout as the biggest business risk heading into 2026. Let me say that again. Nearly half of the people responsible for managing your workforce believe that burnout, specifically their own burnout, poses the greatest threat to organisational stability. But let's be honest, this isn't just about HR feeling tired. This is about a systemic failure that could cascade through your entire operation. Here's what the data tells us. According to HiBob, 42% of HR professionals say managing employee well-being is the most emotionally demanding part of their job. 63% describe HR as their company's crisis hotline, and nearly one-third are considering quitting due to burnout. Think about what that means. The very people you rely on to retain talent, to maintain culture, to navigate redundancies and restructures, are themselves contemplating the exit. Business psychologist Danielle Haig calls this chronic empathic load. HR professionals absorb the emotional crises, conflicts, and struggles of everyone else, day after day, without adequate recovery time. And the consequences are predictable. Cognitive fatigue, emotional exhaustion, compassion fatigue. As Haig put it, when HR is burnt out, culture, performance, and psychological safety decline too. Now, 2025 has thrown everything at HR teams. AI transformation, employment law changes, economic uncertainty, the expectation that they'll manage constant change while running leaner than ever. 58% of HR leaders expect to operate with even smaller teams in 2026. 1 in 10 already works in a team of 3 or fewer. And yet, these same professionals are being asked to drive productivity improvements, integrate AI tools, and prepare their workforce for an uncertain future, all while fielding emotional calls from every corner of the organization. Laura Fink, HiBob's People and Culture Director, summed it up well. Expectations are higher than ever and teams are running lean. But here's the tension. HR is finally getting recognition at the top table. More leaders are relying on HR for direction on culture, trust, and performance. That's progress. But it also means the pressure isn't going away. Let's contextualize this against wider burnout statistics. According to research published earlier this year, 82% of employees are at risk of burnout. Workplace stress contributes to approximately 120,000 deaths annually in the United States alone, and burnout-related costs run into the hundreds of billions. But here's what makes HR burnout particularly dangerous. It's contagious. When the people responsible for detecting burnout in others are themselves burned out, warning signs get missed. Early interventions don't happen, and small problems become systemic failures. So who should be concerned? If you're a CEO or executive, this is your problem. HR burnout isn't an HR problem. It's a leadership blind spot that directly impacts retention, performance, and culture. If you're in a rapidly growing or transforming organization, take note. AI adoption, restructuring, and change management put disproportionate strain on HR teams. If you're pushing through transformation without checking on the people managing that transformation, you're building on unstable foundations. If you've experienced high turnover or difficult redundancies recently, understand that your HR team has absorbed the emotional weight of those decisions. They've had the hard conversations so you didn't have to. And if you're an HR professional yourself, this isn't a personal failing. This is structural. The answer isn't to be more resilient, it's to demand the resources, support, and boundaries that make the job sustainable. Here's some steps to consider when mitigating this crisis. First, make HR check-ins a leadership priority. If executives are reviewing financial health monthly, workforce resilience deserves the same attention. Ask your HR leaders directly, how are you and your team coping? Second, rotate high-stress responsibilities. The people handling redundancies this quarter shouldn't be the same people handling them next quarter. Build operational resilience into the HR function itself. Third, set realistic workloads. If your HR team is running lean, something has to give. Either headcount increases, scope decreases, or burnout follows. Those are your options. Fourth, provide professional mental health support. Access to counselling, employee assistance programs, and external resources isn't a nice to have. It's operational infrastructure. And finally, model the behaviour you want to see. If leaders aren't taking time off, aren't setting boundaries, aren't acknowledging their own limitations, neither will anyone else. As we head into 2026, the organisations that thrive won't just be the ones managing external threats effectively. They'll be the ones who recognise that the biggest risk might already be sitting in their own office, exhausted, wondering how much longer they can keep going. Before we move on to our second threat update, let's look at 5 quick-fire emerging threats we've picked up throughout the fortnight. These will be noteworthy stories we think you should know about, but less detailed than our core threats analysed, and stories we'll continue to keep an eye on for development. Cloudflare has apologised for, quote, letting the internet down again after its second major outage in less than 3 weeks. On December 5th, a configuration change to Cloudflare's web application firewall triggered cascading failures across approximately 28% of all HTTP traffic the company serves. The outage lasted 25 minutes and knocked offline Banks, Shopify, Zoom, LinkedIn, and ironically Downdetector, the website people use to check if services are down. Cloudflare's chief technology officer confirmed the incident was not a cyber attack but an internal error during a security patch deployment. With Cloudflare serving roughly 20% of all websites globally, this is a stark reminder that concentration risk in digital infrastructure affects everyone. Human error can be just as disruptive as malicious intent. JP Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon has warned that a weakening Europe poses a major economic risk to the United States. Speaking at the Reagan National Defense Forum, Dimon criticised Europe's slow bureaucracy, declining innovation, and fragmented decision-making across 27 member states. He noted that Europe's share of global GDP has dropped from 90% of America's to just 65% over the past decade. His warning: if Europe fragments, America loses a critical economic and strategic ally. JP Morgan has announced plans to direct up to $1.5 trillion into supply chains, defense, and critical infrastructure over the next decade. Businesses dependent on European trade or operations should factor political and economic stability into their planning. PwC's 2025 Global Family Business Survey reveals that Thai family businesses are taking a cautious approach to market disruptions, with only 22% reporting double-digit sales growth, down from 30% 2 years ago. The percentage reporting sales declines has doubled. The culprit? A conservative mindset toward digital transformation and AI adoption. Only 22% have invested in digital and AI initiatives compared to 39% globally. And just 3% are experimenting with generative AI. PwC recommends building organisational agility and making decisive technology investments. The lesson applies universally. Hesitancy to modernise in a volatile environment is itself a risk. A series of 3 fires at Novelis aluminum plant in Oswego, New York, has created a staggering financial toll for the automotive industry. The plant supplies approximately 40% of the aluminum sheets used by American automakers. Ford estimates the disruption could cost up to $2 billion, with production of its F-150 and F-Series trucks directly impacted. The hot mill was damaged in September, with additional fires occurring in October and November during repair work. Novelis is leveraging its global network and industry peers to fill supply gaps, but the incident highlights the fragility of concentrated manufacturing capacity. Businesses dependent on single-source suppliers should review their exposure. Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei has warned that some AI companies are, quote, YOLOing their capital investments and pulling the risk dial too far. Speaking at the DealBook Summit, Amodei expressed concern about companies making massive data center commitments based on uncertain future revenue. With data centers requiring 1 to 2 years to build, decisions about 2027 capacity must be made now. Amodei described a cone of uncertainty where timing errors could prove catastrophic for companies that have overextended. Without naming names, his comments appear directed at competitors committing hundreds of billions to AI infrastructure. For businesses evaluating AI partnerships, financial stability and sustainable growth should factor into vendor selection. Further sources and references can be found in the footnotes of this podcast. But without further delay, let's look at our second threat update this week. India has just changed the rules for how 500 million people use messaging apps, and whether you're in Delhi or Delaware, you should be paying attention. The Department of Telecommunications has directed WhatsApp, Telegram, Signal, and other messaging platforms to implement continuous SIM binding. In plain terms, if your registered SIM card isn't physically present and active in your device, your messaging app stops working immediately. This isn't about one-time verification. it's about persistent connection. Your account must remain tethered to your SIM at all times. Remove it, replace it, let it deactivate, and you're locked out. Web and desktop versions will automatically log you out every 6 hours. Users will need to re-authenticate through QR code pairing to maintain access. The government's justification is cybersecurity. India recorded cyber fraud losses exceeding 22,800 crore rupees in 2024, roughly $2.7 billion US. Officials argue that messaging apps currently function even after a SIM is removed or deactivated, enabling anonymous cross-border scams, digital arrest frauds, and government impersonation schemes. The Cellular Operators Association of India, representing Reliance Jio, Bharti Airtel, and Vodafone Idea, strongly supports the mandate. They argue SIM binding will restore traceability and significantly reduce fraud. But here's where it gets complicated. A Local Circles survey of 115,000 consumers found that 1 in 2 believe SIM binding will cause disruption and inconvenience. 7 in 10 international travellers expressed concerns about using messaging platforms overseas, and 40% of respondents currently use messaging apps on multiple devices without a SIM present. Think about what this means practically. If you swap to a local SIM while travelling abroad, your messaging apps stop working. If you rely on WhatsApp Web for business communications, you'll need to re-authenticate every 6 hours. If you use a tablet without a SIM slot or share a number across family devices, you're facing significant friction. The Broadband India Forum, representing technology firms including Meta and Google, has raised serious objections. They argue the directive extends beyond the mandate of telecommunications regulations and creates significant operational risks. Digital rights advocates warn that mandatory SIM linkage erodes privacy and could enable surveillance. And there's a deeper concern here. Does SIM binding actually solve the fraud problem it's designed to address? Critics point out that many cyber frauds in India rely on SIMs obtained through fraudulent KYC in the first place. Tying accounts to compromised SIMs doesn't restore accountability. It creates a false sense of security. But let's step back from the Indian context for a moment, because this matters well beyond one country's borders. India is the world's second largest internet market. More than 500 million people use WhatsApp there. If SIM binding becomes normalized in India, other governments will take notice. This could become a template for digital identity regulation globally. And that raises fundamental questions. How much control should governments have over digital communication? Where is the line between fraud prevention and surveillance? What happens to anonymity, which protects not just criminals, but journalists, activists, and vulnerable communities? So, who should be concerned? If you have employees or operations in India, this directly affects your business communications. Multi-device workflows, desktop messaging, and persistent sessions will all be disrupted within 90 days of the directive. If you're in the technology sector, particularly communications platforms, India's approach could influence regulatory thinking in other markets. Understanding how this plays out is strategically important. If you do business with Indian partners or clients, expect communication patterns to shift. 6-hour logouts and re-authentication requirements will affect responsiveness. And if you're watching regulatory trends globally, this is a significant data point. The tension between cybersecurity, privacy, and digital rights is intensifying, and India is now a leading edge of that debate. Here's what you can do about it. First, assess your exposure. If your organization relies on messaging platforms for India-based operations, map out how SIM binding will affect your workflows. Second, develop contingency communications. Consider backup channels that aren't affected by SIM binding requirements, particularly for time-sensitive business communications. Third, brief international travelers. Anyone visiting India should understand that using a local SIM will disrupt access to their primary messaging accounts. Fourth, monitor regulatory developments. India has given platforms 90 days to comply. The implementation details, technical workarounds, and potential exemptions will become clearer in the coming weeks. And finally, engage with the broader conversation. The trade-offs between security and privacy are not going away. Organizations that think through their position on digital identity, data sovereignty, and surveillance will be better prepared as similar debates emerge elsewhere. India's SIM binding mandate might be a legitimate attempt to combat fraud, or it might be an overreach that creates more problems than it solves. Either way, it's a preview of regulatory tensions that will define digital governance for years to come. That's it for today's update. If you need help navigating these threats or building a plan to protect your business, the same advisors who collate these insights are here to help. Head over to unbreakableventures.com to book a complimentary chat online with one of them. And if you found this resource useful, consider subscribing to Unbreakable Ventures or sharing the article with your network. After all, resilience is about community and communication. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, stay safe.
Unbreakable Ventures is brought to you by the Senior Advisory Team at Fixing, a boutique resilience advisory based in the Oceania, ASEAN and India regions. Special thanks to our sponsor and Europe's leading SaaS provider for resilience software, F24. Our resources are researched and published by industry specialists across New Zealand, Australia, Malaysia and the UK. This podcast provides advice and opinion on disaster recovery and the threat landscape. The content is not a substitute for expert guidance during a crisis. Unbreakable Ventures is trademarked by Fixing Consulting Partners, a Fixing Group company.